Jerome Chaplier, who is the coordinator of the European Coalition for Corporate Justice, which, as most of you know, is a network of 21 civil society organisations from 15 European countries. And this coalition is advocating for a stronger EU legal framework on corporate accountability. Jerome has been working on the EU policy agenda on business and human rights, and more particularly on non-financial reporting, mandatory human rights due diligence and access to remedies. So, Jerome, please take the floor.
Thank you, Heidi. And on behalf of the co-organizing NGOs, I would like to thank our co-sponsors from the European Parliament and the National Assembly for making this very important and very timely event possible. The EU has quickly positioned itself as a front-runner in the business and human rights agenda when the UNGPs were adopted in 2011, and they committed to make it a centerpiece of its strategies. And the Commission also called on Member States to do likewise and to develop national action plans, resulting now in 8 Member States in the EU having such plan released, and another 8 being in the process of developing one. However, despite this quite quick and promising uptake reflected in the 2011 CSR strategy, the issue has not been sufficiently high on the political agenda. The Commission has not yet put forward a set of clear priorities to implement the 3 pillars of the UNGPs, and most of the European and national policy plans released so far appear to be more a presentation of a state of play rather than really a set of forward-looking actions, and they haven't been the catalyzers for EU and Member States' action that we hoped they would be. 5 years after the UNGPs were warmly welcomed by governments, can we say that individuals and communities who are affected by business activities across the globe are better off? Have they been more empowered to hold companies to account? Do they have access to more information on companies' adverse impacts and how they are prevented? Do they face less obstacles when trying to access remedies? Of course, it was never intended that the victims would rely directly on the UNGPs to solve the imbalance of power they face against corporations and to stop impunity. It's largely on states to ensure that, especially as certain gaps can only be addressed through laws. Today we need a smart mix of voluntary approach and regulation. It's no longer disputed, but it's hardly achieved. In particular, there are 2 elephants in the room in this business and human rights debate. What accountability mechanisms are needed to ensure companies exercise their responsibility to respect human rights? And how do we address the often insuperable obstacles faced by victims when trying to access remedies? And the growing trend towards making human rights due diligence mandatory at least partially answer these issues. It is widely accepted now, not only morally but also legally, that companies have a responsibility to address their adverse impacts. Carrying out human rights due diligence is the proactive and preventive way to do that. It's a broadly accepted concept that sets a baseline process for responsible behaviour. And the concept goes beyond the limitations presented by the very complex corporate structures now, which in today's globalized economy allow evading responsibility for damages that occur outside the European borders. We welcome a lot of individual efforts from companies, very interesting sectoral initiatives. We have more guidance and standards available. However, the business and market responses have proved insufficient so far, and we still have an unlevel playing field. So creating a corporate duty of care to exercise due diligence is one of the available avenues to states to integrate this responsibility to respect human rights into a legal requirement, as illustrated by the French law that we will discuss in detail today. Recently, the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, which is in charge of overseeing how the UNGPs are being implemented, addressed the G20, and it restated that regulation provides one important means for governments, notably through human rights due diligence and reporting requirements. And the UN Working Group welcomed the fact that governments like France and the UK have led the way by enacting legislations. This adds to many signals that were received, the recommendations for the 47 ministers of the Council of Europe, the European Council conclusions adopted last June, the EP that released a report on corporate liability with very concrete recommendations. We could add the work done in the OECD, the ILO, the UN, the G7, and we really see that all these signals converge toward the need to have more action and more and have a strong political basis. So in this context, the leadership shown by some member states like France could be a turning point, act as a boost for ongoing initiatives and stimulate new ones. We see that the EU is at crossroads today, and states have an opportunity to show how the rights of people can be placed at the center of its political and economic project. France has now demonstrated the kind of political courage and leadership that is needed to shape a new Europe, one that is a global leader in ensuring that respect for human rights is at the heart of doing business. Thank you.